suspension was in October last year, 175 days suspension. 10:30 p.m. last night, April 10, suspension lifted by the stock exchange after 5 months. Why? Because it's been a subject of investigation and forensic audit. And the submission date of the forensic audit, we do not know. But meanwhile, who are the people that have suffered? The people that have suffered are, one, investors, retail and wholesale and institutional, management, regulators, and the markets. Basically, we've eaten into the market confidence. So again, they say better late than never. But what has happened to the downstream sector in this period? In the last 175 days, the Q3, Q4 GDP numbers have come out. The downstream sector has actually grown by about 8.3%.
Which is part of where Oando, Nigeria, operates, yes.
All right. And this industry is oligopolistic to a large extent. It's dominated by a few players, Oando being one of them. Forte Oil, Con Oil, Total.
Just a few of them, just about 7 or 8.
Profitability of this industry has been up 13% at a time when profitability is going down. So we've had the, what do you call the subsidy issues and all of that, but the industry has been doing well, even in terms of GDP, in terms of profitability, but revenues came down because things were being rationalized. In the meantime, the investors and the shareholders in Oando have suffered because it's static. But is it normal for that kind of thing to happen? No. The truth is that technical suspension was used in the past for when there were rights issues, or even if there was an infraction by management, you go very quickly, finish it, and you don't punish the investors. What has happened so far is that there's been trading on this stock, maybe under the table, where people have been losing value. And that's not good for the market.
Well, we look at, and if you try to unpack the why and how of technical suspension, that's what you're getting into. Yes. What you call the why and the how of a technical suspension. First, why will the technical suspension be imposed? And second, how? How on as to how long should it be? Should it be punitive and being protective? So let's put it, they're being punitive and being protecting investors.
Historically, the day you want to do a rights issue, historically, then you put, the day you announce it, they put the stock on technical suspension. After the allotment of shares so that people couldn't corner it, they now lift it. But ever since then, the Securities and Exchange Commission has allowed trading in rights. So that is no longer, that's a redundant rule. The only other time where you have technical suspension is when there's some untoward behavior, but you go in quickly and do it. But at times it happens where you have what they call circuit breakers. If something is happening, something that could be detrimental to market health and all of that, then you go in very temporarily, and the maximum period for those kind of suspensions is about 10 days, not 175 days. What we have is 10 times that happening in this particular case. And typically, you know, regulators are on top of the game. There's the SRO, which is the Nigerian Stock Exchange, there's the SEC itself, and you know, there's been controversy because this is a political environment, so people don't want to be caught in this. Investors should be protected from all of that, you know, the ups and downs.
Do you think we're resolving this Oando's case or issue right now? Of course, the court case has been cleared, so that paved for the way for the new leadership or at the SEC to say we're starting the forensic audit. And forensic audit, we hear it is now about 3 weeks in the works already, and an interim report could be ready anytime soon. Are we gradually seeing the end, the beginning of the end of this?
Yes. See, Oando as a company is going through its own internal governance issues. Oando as a company are competing. They are pitching for various projects, including the gas pipeline, maybe part of the refinery restoration and rehabilitation projects and all that. 1. 2, Oando as a company is also having some shareholder issues that have been resolved. But what is more important is the fact that investors are looking at the signals that are coming out from 1, the regulators, 2, the company, and 3, the market. What we want to do is to mobilize resources so that the market can grow. We are going to have the MTN listing very soon. We're going to have this. So it's the way we handle these matters is also send a clear signal to potential, existing, and also international investors that this market is transparent, this market is accountable, and this market is there to protect all interests, not to be used for punitive purposes. I think that's a clear signal. Secondly, the market is mature. We are in the era of social media. Whatever happens, investors are coming out and asking for their rights, both minority investors, majority investors, and stakeholders. So this is a very clear thing. In the past, in the US, for example, this has happened on March 22nd, there was temporary suspension in March in 2018, this year, of a company in what they call it, FWell ENF Corporation. And that suspension was for 10 business days due to concerns about accuracy and adequacy of information. But within 10 days, it was free. And that is in the US market, which is one of the most efficient and advanced markets in the world. We are emulating this. This Oando is listed, dual listing, under multiple jurisdictions, in South Africa and Nigeria. And if the base and the home country is taking 175 days to put something like this out of the way, when major developments, market developments are taking place, a contract of $2.8 billion, which is infinitely higher than whichever contract you could have gotten this year. Now, you are now lifting the suspension today. So many things have happened yesterday. At the time of this, before the suspension, what was the exchange rate? What was the inflation rate? What was the GDP growth rate? What was the economics of the country? And international investors who wanted to go in, shift their portfolios around at a time when Nigeria is going for an election. So you cannot, freeze the stock for 175 days, and then after the event, you now say, okay, you can now come and buy or sell. I think the lesson from this is that we shouldn't do that in future, and there should be damage control for this in terms of our reputation as a market and our reputation as regulators.
Well, you're landing that on where I wanted to pick up the next question about when regulators intervene, and not just the SEC, sometimes the central bank also intervening in affairs of banks as well, and these have to be carefully managed. So when the word suspension hits the streets, what normally happens?
Well, panic. Suspension, the other word for suspension is suspicion. Why are you being suspended? And what is wrong?
Like when you were suspended, if we are suspended from school.
Yes, and you
so
go back and say, what did you do?
Yeah, what did you do?
Okay, so the word suspension is punitive. The word suspension leads to suspicion. And even where there was nothing, something, you find something. So what we should do, regulators have to be more sensitive to market, because markets are jittery. So and I think that's part of what's happening. I listened to the public hearing about the SEC thing and all that, and the Minister of Finance and the erstwhile DG of SEC all talked about the fact that market sensitivity, this is a very sensitive business, and therefore they were being very guarded and very, very tentative about the words they use, because every word they say is going to be taken seriously. The Central Bank governor over the weekend also was extremely cautious about his pronouncements, because whatever he says could be misinterpreted and could send markets into panic. So I think we have learned our lessons, and what is important now is that the markets should settle down, and I think that you will see, I suspect that today you're going to see a lot of positive activity, because there's been a lot of demand for these stocks, especially the sectors that are growing fast, the sectors that are bidding for federal government work, especially as we go into the budget cycle that is coming up in 2018. I see good signs, especially at this time when market volatility globally
in the manner of speaking, Mr. Rewane, do you think that over the last 6 months or thereabout, that the technical suspension on the share price of Oando could have put a bit of a cloud over the entire few oil and gas stocks that we have lifted? Because here, so we're talking about a company that's worth a share price north of 130 just about 8 years ago, and now at the rock bottom, as you use the expression here, at 599.
I think, to be honest with you,
if investors are going to be asking questions.
Investors are going to be asking questions about it to affect the entire sector. One. And that sector is actually the backbone of the market and the Nigerian economy, the downstream petroleum area. If anything happens to the price of petrol, anything happens to the price of diesel, it affects logistics costs, it affects aviation, it affects inflation, it affects so many things. So it is critical. And if this is a leading player, and as many other leading players like Forte Oil, Con Oil, Mobil, Total, it's important that there's a fair, level playing field, and that you don't want the problem of one to affect the other. And that is what has happened. In the banking industry, people are very careful about even singling out a particular institution, because once there's fear, then everybody panics, and there's a run on the entire banking system. So what you do is to insulate the system from shocks, especially from perceptions and suspicion that something is going wrong. I think that's the role of the regulators, and they've done pretty well. All I'm saying that next time we should be very surgical. Whatever you're doing, look at it very quickly, finish it, and put it behind you, so that because markets are G3, 1, 2. Because of the fluidity of money and liquidity, people will move money from this market to another market. And so money that was going to come in, people will say, wow, why should I go in there if these guys don't know their ass from their elbows?
And that speaks to the ongoing forensic audit. What's your take of Oando? How soon do you think this should be done? They just started about 3 weeks?
No, the forensic audit should have been finished by now. Look, let them commit the resources. The market cannot wait indefinitely with a cloud hanging over any company. Finish it. If there's any infraction, deal with it and move on. We've seen that happen everywhere in the world. If there are no infractions, sorry, go away. If there's a minor infraction, slap on the wrist and move on. But this is critical. So a lot of people owe their livelihood to this. And more than anything else, Nigeria's perception, the reputation of this country as being cloudy, opaque, not sincere, not transparent, has to be lifted. We cannot afford to have that. What is not said is more important than what is said, what we call content analysis. Because investors look at you and say, well, oh, Nigeria, yeah, thank you very much. I don't want any of that. You don't want that kind of thing. Oh, Nigeria, yeah, these guys have come around. They are transparent, They're anti-corrupt and all, and move on.
We appreciate it.